Hello, boys and girls. I'm your Peter Pan storyteller.
This is the story of The Last Starfighter.
This is the story of Gremlins.
This is the story of Tron.
This is the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This is the story of The Empire Strikes Back.
You can read along with me in your book.
You can follow the story along with me.
Every time you hear this sound,
Turn the pages when you hear this sound.
You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear the computer sound like this.
Let's begin now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The ladybugs came to the ladybugs picnic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And they all played games at the ladybugs picnic.
Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of When You Hear This Sound, brought to you by the Space Monkey X Audio Workshop. I'm your host, Rob Lamley. This week I have a pretty obscure record for you, based on a pretty obscure toy line from the 1980s called Sectaurs. Sectaurs was the brainchild of Tim Clark, a puppet maker who worked at Jim Henson Studios in the 1980s. If you'll pardon the pun, Clark had a hand in designing and building puppets for the Dark Crystal and Fraggle Rock, as well as sculpting some of the action figures for an unreleased Dark Crystal toy line. Working on the Dark Crystal toys inspired Clark to want to work in the industry, so he teamed up with toy designer Maureen Trotto to flesh out his ideas. Their biggest idea, Sectaurs, tapped into Clark's background as a puppet maker. The concept included hand puppets that looked like giant hairy insects that kids controlled. Not only would kids' fingers control 4 of the legs of the creatures, but their 5th finger would activate a special function of the insect, like flapping the wings or snapping the jaws. These puppets would be teamed up with half-human, half-insect action figures that rode the puppets like cavalry. After pitching their idea to many different companies, it was Coleco, makers of the home video game system the ColecoVision, as well as the wildly popular Cabbage Patch dolls, that gave it the green light. As with many toy lines of the 1980s, there were 2 factions of Sectaurs, the good guys led by Dargon, the Prince of the Shining Realm, and the bad guys led by Empress Devora, ruler of the dark domain of Synax, and her wicked henchman Spydrax. Both vied to control the Hives, the ruins of an ancient civilization that held a mysterious power that was the key to controlling the planet of Symbion. Coleco released Wave 1 of Sectaurs toys in the spring of 1985, featuring 4 deluxe figure sets, each with a 7-inch action figure and a hand puppet insect. 3 other action figures were produced that came bundled with a smaller insect that was not a puppet, but still had some form of special action, like squirting water or a grappling hook to help the figure scale walls. To complement the figures, a massive playset called the Hive was released, measuring 3 feet tall and nearly 3 feet across, making it one of the biggest playsets on the market. Following the blueprint of successful franchises like G.I. Joe and Masters of the Universe, the Sectaurs were backed by a large-scale marketing push, including an animated cartoon miniseries from Ruby Spears, a comic book from Marvel, and plenty of tie-in merchandise like storybooks, coloring books, puzzles, and branded school supplies. They even had their own big wheel knockoff called a Power Cycle that featured a giant insect head on the handlebars with wings that could flap at the push of a button. Unfortunately, as ambitious as it might have been, the toy line did not sell well. While the figures were bigger than the 5.5-inch Masters of the Universe toys, for most parents that didn't justify the higher cost of the Sectaurs line. A deluxe Sectaurs figure set with the action figure and the hand puppet cost $23, or the equivalent of about $67 today. By comparison, a new Masters of the Universe figure would run you about $5.50 at the time. Even the figures with the non-puppet bugs were priced above that at $8. The unwieldy Hive playset was priced around $50, or about $146 today. But the much smaller and more manageable Castle Grayskull was only $30. Aside from the higher price, many parents complained that the hairy insects were simply off-putting, so they didn't want to have them around the house at all. The Sectaurs run ended after only 1 year and 1 wave of toys. But that wasn't the end of the Sectaurs story. They might not have been very popular back in the day, but modern toy fans have come to realize how creative and forward-thinking the toy line was, so it has developed something of a cult following. To that end, in 2018, Zika Toys launched a Kickstarter campaign to reboot the Sectaurs. Unfortunately, none of Zika's plans included the hand puppet companions. Without that component, the Kickstarter campaign only made it through the first wave of 2 figures before failing to launch for a second time. And yet the Sectaurs still weren't finished. In 2022, the Nacelle Company started a slow reboot of the franchise, releasing 2 figures, Prince Dargond and Stellara, a female warrior that was planned for the original second wave of figures in 1986. However, as of right now, these are the only 2 figures available, and once again, there have been no puppet insect companions announced for the line. Of course, this is just a brief summary of the Sectaurs toy line. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper, check out the 30-minute documentary, The Story of the Sectaurs, produced by Retro Toy Review on YouTube. I'll put a link to the video in the show notes. Part of the marketing push for Sectaurs in 1985 were 3 read-along record books, as well as a long-play storybook album, all from Kid Stuff Records. The record we'll be hearing today is called Invasion of Skall Island. That's Skall with an A, not Skull with a U. In the Sectaur lore, Skall is the raw, natural material that the Sectaurs use to make their weapons and armor. I also own the long play album, titled simply Sectaurs Warriors of Symbion, so maybe I'll play that one for you someday too. But for now, we'll stick with a read-along record book, scans of which you can find in the show notes over at spacemonkeyx.net. And what a record book it is! The artwork was created by Pablos Marcos, a Peruvian artist who has been working as a professional since the 1960s, where he got his start drawing James Bond comic strips in Peru. In the 1970s, Marcos moved to New Jersey and began penciling for Warren Publishing's Creepy and Eerie magazines. He would later go on to become one of the mainstay horror artists at Marvel Comics during the Bronze Age, with regular gigs on Dracula Lives, Monsters Unleashed, and Vampire Tales. But he is perhaps best known for the artwork on Marvel's Tales of the Zombie, drawing all but one issue throughout the comics run from 1973 to 1975. He also served as an inker for John Buscema on The Savage Sword of Conan in the early 1980s. His artwork for Invasion of Skall Island is really top-notch. Nearly the entire book is made up of 2-page spreads that are highly detailed, rich in color, and with some great compositions. It really is one of the best books in my collection, so definitely stop by and check it out. And with that, let's get to the record. Here is Sectaurs, Invasion of Skall Island from Kid Stuff Records, released in 1985. Enjoy.
Children of Earth, I am Mantor, one of a new race, a Sectaur from the planet Symbion. Welcome to your Sectaurs read-along book. As you read this story, you will understand how important my message is. You are my witness. Children, to you I swear the truth. This story will show you that being too proud can be a fault, and it can make a warrior lose the battle. Every time you hear this sound, it means it's time to turn the page in your storybook. Now, we are ready to begin the story, Invasion of Skall Island. Don't forget to turn the page every time you hear the sound. Here on Symbion, things are rarely peaceful. They haven't been for centuries, since the time of the Great Cataclysm, a terrible time of destruction, when our ancestors, the ancients, sealed the story of their race and the secrets of their learning and technology in the biocontrol centers we call hives. Since then, Symbion has been divided into 2 major kingdoms: the Shining Realm, ruled by King Makor the Mighty, and the Dark Domain, ruled by Empress Devora. At the head of Devora's evil forces is General Spidrax, a cold, ruthless Sectaur who secretly lives for the day when he alone will control all of Symbion. Come with me now, as together we relive a dangerous adventure in our planet's history. Mark the tale well and take heed. There is much to learn. Our planets are alike in many ways. What happened to us could happen to you. Listen well, children of Earth. At Grimhold, castle of the Dark Domain, General Spidrax called out to Skito, a sly, savage mercenary.
Skito, crawl forth and show yourself.
And Toxid?
Leave that brainless insect elsewhere. Last time he dribbled his poisonous venom all over Empress Devora's carpets. The Empress was furious for weeks.
And rightly so, General Spidrax. Excuse me while I dismiss my telebonded friend.
Skito then sent a mental message to Toxid. since Sector warriors can communicate without words to their telebonded insectoid companions.
Toxin, you revolting genetic accident, take your smelly shell elsewhere. See, General Spydrax, see how well he obeys me. He is loyal, stupid but loyal.
A trait you will never share, Skall.
My loyalty will be unquestionable when I tell you the news I bring with me.
Something interesting?
Interesting just begins to describe it, General. It's absolutely astounding and expensive. Worth over 100 stuni at least.
You greedy mercenary. You will be paid when and if I find this information worthy.
Skall quickly began his story.
General, just last week, while relaxing from my travels on the shores of the Lake of Blood, I made a remarkable discovery. The supply drums which carry provisions across the lake to the farmers on Skall Island look amazingly like the eggs of the fierce fighter ants we've been breeding in the hills. This is the ideal opportunity to test our new breed in battle for the first time.
Are you suggesting I gain control of all the Skall on the island? All that precious Skall from which our weapons are made?
Yes, General. We can allow countless hordes of those vicious beasts to hatch on Skall Island. And history will record it as your suggestion, my General. It will assure the Empress that you have not lost your touch for great planning.
Just as you, sly one, have not lost yours for worming your way into favor. You are dismissed.
But General,
I said dismissed, Skall. There is much to do. Tasks that require hard work. You will not be needed, nor will you be paid until this plan is complete.
News travels fast on Symbion, especially General Spydrax's military secrets. A short time later, Dragonflyer, Prince Dargon's telebonded steed, was flying over Skall Island when he spotted something with his colossal blue eyes. Something that made the fur on his neck bristle. He returned immediately to the Shining Realm and landed before Dargon. The warrior prince already understood the telebonded message from Dragonflyer and sensed his steed's alarm.
Whatever Dragonflyer saw at Skall Island must have caused him great concern. I will take a small regiment of troops and go there immediately. I only hope I am not too late.
Dargon boarded Dragonflyer and telebonded to his steed.
Up, Dragonflyer! Take me up!
General Spydrax was pleased with himself. In fact, he had even begun to believe that the plan was his own. His red eyes glowed with satisfaction as he cracked his whip beside Spiderflyer, his insectoid, and telebonded.
Faster, Spiderflyer! You must fly faster!
Then he thought to himself,
because those fighter ants resemble supply shipments, they will pass unnoticed when they arrive on Skall Island. And thanks to our careful breeding, we have been able to time their hatching to the exact hour of my invasion. Everyone will panic. Chaos will reign supreme. Then Skall Island will be mine. No one can stop me now, not even Dargon. Soon, the realm of darkness will prevail, and all of Symbion will be mine.
Meanwhile, on Skall Island, a large group of Sector farmers stood on the dock and stared at the mountain of newly arrived supplies. The farmers could not know that these supply drums were actually fighter ant eggs about to hatch. One of the farmers commented,
Either our rations have been increased, or more workers are being assigned to the island. I haven't seen this large a shipment in years.
Piled high on the dock, under the blazing suns, were thousands of shiny white eggs. As the sun's heat spread through them, life began to stir inside. Already, the fighter ants' strong legs were starting to scratch at the inside of their shells. It was just a matter of hours before the first one, then countless thousands of the monsters would crack open their shells and attack. In the air, just offshore, General Spidrax and his troops waited anxiously. Spidrax was pleased with himself as he telebonded to Spiderfly.
Faster, fly faster.
Then he thought to himself,
our timing will be perfect. The eggs will hatch at the exact moment we land. No one in the Shining Realm suspects what is about to happen, not even Dargon. The rest will be history.
The whirring of Spiderflyer's colossal wings echoed across the island as he circled in.
Wait for just the right moment. Hold back, Spiderflyer.
Spidrax telebonded. Seeing the eggs about to burst open, Spidrax cried to his troops.
Attack! Attack! The eggs are hatching!
Just as the troops were crossing over to the island, thousands of fighter ants were breaking free of their shells. Their semi-soft bodies soon dried to metallic strength in the twin suns, causing the frightened farmers to flee before their oncoming army. Once General Spidrax had landed, he issued orders.
Take your combat posts, troops. Secure all posts and grip the island. We are unstoppable. See how the workers run. What a victory. Empress Devora will be so pleased. Once the processing of Skall here on the island is fully controlled by the Dark Domain, the Shining Realm will soon fall to our superior power, and Dargon will crawl before me, begging for mercy.
Suddenly, a voice rang out behind Spidrax.
Never, Spidrax! I would sooner die than give you that pleasure.
Spidrax spun around and came face to face with Dargon, heroic warrior of the Shining Realm. With his sword held high and his blue eyes shining, Dargon stepped forward and leveled his gaze directly at Spidrax.
So, old foe, we meet again. Still up to your old tricks, I see.
Well, if it isn't Dargon. You have the most unpleasant way of showing up at the wrong time. Just like ants at a picnic. Only this time, I've brought my own ants. Look, up in the hills. See how my army of fighters have overrun the island. There's little left for me to do but place my guards. You're outnumbered 1,000 to 1, Dargon. Now, I shall squash you underfoot, as I have so longed to do.
Try it, you brutal butcher. The pleasure of battle will be mine.
Spidrax raised his venom-tipped whip, and Dargon gripped his sword before him. The fight was about to begin. The first crack of Spidrax's whip fell short of its mark. Dargon taunted Spidrax for his error.
Quite a shot, General. With 6 eyes, you should have better aim than that.
With one thrust of his sword, Dargon sliced the whip in two, and the whip oozed and wriggled as it fell to the ground. Spidrax then drew his Vengun pistol, shouting,
You'll feel my fury soon enough, Dargon.
And he released a round of venom-tipped darts. Grabbing his shield of Skall, Dargon deflected the darts. Seconds later, all the troops on Skall Island joined in the fighting. The battle soon became one of the fiercest ever seen on the planet. Even though they were outnumbered by Spidrax and the fighter ants, Dargon and his soldiers fought courageously. But the overwhelming odds against them soon began to take their toll. It seemed that the troops of the Shining Realm were doomed to lose the battle for Skall Island. Only a miracle could save them now. But sometimes miracles do happen, even on Symbion. And this one came about because Spidrax was too proud, too confident that he couldn't be beaten. This pride would be his downfall. Spidrax knew that his mysterious fighter ants were strong. but he did not know that they had one weakness. They were allergic to a chemical found in the Skall farmed on the island. This chemical put the fierce fighter ants to sleep. So it was that the ants' ferocious eyes grew dreamy and closed. They toppled over on their sides by the thousands. This left Spidrax without the large number of troops he had earlier, and the tide of battle turned in favor of the Shining Realm. Soon, Dagon was able to rout Spidrax's forces. Skall Island was safe once more. Back in the Dark Domain, things were even darker than usual when Spidrax and his defeated troops returned home. Skeeto bounded up through the crowd to General Spidrax, asking eagerly,
"How did your great plan work, General?"
It was your cheap plan, and you know it, Skeeto.
I think you'll find Empress Devora may feel otherwise, Spidrax. But then what would I know?
And with a bow to the general, Skeeto disappeared back into the crowd, well beyond the range of the general's fury. Alone and about to face Devora's anger, Spidrax muttered,
"I should never have listened to Skeeto's plan. I am surrounded by incompetent vermin. Another victory falls to the Shining Realm, and I am humiliated. 1,000 Symbion curses upon Dagon and that weak and powerless territory they call the Shining Realm. But there will be other battles to fight, and next time I, Spidrax, will emerge the victor."
Then, shouting out into the Symbion darkness, Spidrax swore,
"Hear this, Dagon! The fight is not over yet. Not while we live. Sectaurs, warriors of Symbion."
Thanks for stopping by the show today. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can head over to spacemonkeyx.net for pictures, links, and additional information about this episode, and check out some of the other podcasts presented by the Space Monkey X Audio Workshop. This has been your host, Rob Lamley. Thanks for listening to When You Hear This Sound, the podcast dedicated to the weird and wonderful world of read-along record books and storybook vinyl. I'll see y'all next time.